If you have ever been to my house, and we've walked you around the house a little bit and you did some exploring, you will notice that on one of our walls we have a sports memorabilia section where I have a lot of game-used things. I've got a lot of autographs. I've got a lot of things that if you were into the sports world, the autograph world, you'd be kind of impressed with. That's because in my former life, in my office in my former life, before I was a pastor, it was all decked out. All four walls were decked out with autographs. It was just the vibe I was going for. I was a young man living in Green Bay amongst my favorite team, and so it was one of the little hobbies I had of trying to get all the Packer autographs, and it spilled into, I can show you autographs of presidents, and I can show you autographs of celebrities, and I can show you autographs of politicians, and I can show you a lot of Packer autographs. If this is ever a hobby that you might want to take up someday, I've got a bit of advice for you. One of the things that I found to be most frustrating was the fact that even though I lived before Jody and I got married, before obviously I went to seminary, I lived 2 blocks away from 1265 Lombardi Avenue, which is known as Lambeau Field. And so I thought this would be the place for me to get any autograph I ever wanted. But what I always came up to was one sign that stopped the whole shebang. And if you ever want to get into the autograph business, you've got to get used to this sign. And this is the sign: no unauthorized personnel beyond this point. So I was able to go up to a certain point, to a certain door, but once that sign comes up, I'm not allowed to open the doors anymore. I'm not allowed to go into the stadium. I'm not allowed to chase down that person to try to get an autograph. Now, Lambeau Field isn't the only place that has this, right? We know what it's like to have restrictions on what we can enter into. I mean, they're all around us, and sometimes it's kind of amazing if you think how many times and how many rules we live on things and places we can enter and things and places we can't enter. For example, right now you could go to Cub Foods, you could go to Target, and you can walk in. They're not going to check you. They're not going to ask you what you're doing here. They're certainly not going to call the cops on you. Nothing. You're going to walk in freely, no problem. They close at 10 or 9, let's say 9 o'clock. They close at 9 o'clock. Try doing that at 2 in the morning. You do not have, you're restricted. You do not have authorization to be in there after hours. Think of the fact that we have a president or even our governor. If you said today, I want to go and meet my governor, I want to go and meet my president by the end of the week, good luck. That's never going to happen. Only once in a while, and it's usually news, will the president go and shake hands amongst the people? Will the governor, usually in an election time, will he go and shake hands, or if the cameras are there? But you don't have authorization. You do not have access to the governor, your governor. You certainly do not have access to your president. Now, you can go into the White House, actually. You could sign up by the end of the week, and you could walk through the White House if you wanted to, and you could take the tour. Do not go past that velvet rope. Do not take that rope and put it aside and walk through that velvet rope. Do not open that door that you see. Do not open the door. Don't try and open that door. Bad things are going to happen. So we live in a world, we live in a society where there are places that we're allowed to enter at certain times, and there are definitely places we are not allowed to enter. And so today we're going to be talking about that on a spiritual level, because make no mistake, God is exactly the same. God is exactly the same in saying that there is a place that we should not be able to access. You know, one of the biggest lies that is in our world right now, there are a few big lies, and we're going to talk about some of them today. Some of the biggest lies that we have that Satan has convinced many people at and to believe is the fact that anybody gets to access God. Doesn't matter what you believe. Doesn't matter what you worship. Doesn't matter who you worship. Doesn't matter if you worship anything at all. Many people would have you believe that it doesn't matter. I've heard this, maybe you've heard it as well. You know what? It's all a mountain. As long as you believe something and are working your way up the mountain, God will be happy with you. Or, you know what? Jesus is one way to God. There's many ways. There's Buddha, there's Islam, there's Judaism, there's all these things, there's works, all these different ways. As long as you are doing something, God is going to be great with it. Or what you hear today is, just as long as you're spiritual, it really doesn't matter. We're all going there and ending up in the same place anyway. There's no restrictions when it comes to heaven. There's no unauthorized personnel signs there from heaven. And I can tell you, and I'll show it, don't blame the messenger, I can show it to you in Scripture today, that is absolutely not true. That is absolutely false. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The fact that not everybody gets to go to heaven. Not everybody gets to approach God. So what makes it so that you know you can approach God? What makes you so special that you get to come into God's house and you get to talk to Him and you get to ask with Him and you get to plead to Him and you get to sing to Him and you get to hear His words and you expect God to give you forgiveness? What makes you so sure? What has happened that you can point to saying that is why I get to do this? That's what we're going to talk about today in our second installment of our Isaiah sermon series. And like I said, as you go through, and we could be doing this for the next couple years of going through verse by verse for Isaiah, one of the major themes in Isaiah is freedom. Freedom that Jesus, the Messiah, the Lord of all lords, has given to us. In this case, because of who Jesus is, because of what God chose to do, we have freedom to approach. We have freedom to know that we have heaven waiting for us. We know that there is no unauthorized personnel sign stopping us from seeing God someday because of a specific moment in our life. So let's take a look at this. We're going to go to Isaiah chapter 6. It's written for you if you want to follow along. But this is how it's written for us. Isaiah starts out this way. And he says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord." Now, we have to unpack that so you fully understand what happens. I'll give you, again, my 10-second overview of the Old Testament. Real quickly. You have Adam and Eve starting it all off. And over time, God develops the Israelites into a superpower so that when King David is there, he is the superpower, the king of the superpower. There is none stronger because the Lord is with him. And what God does is says, I'm going to put a hedge. I'm going to put my arms down. No one, even though you're much smaller than them, even though foreign enemies can take you over by the end of the day, no one's going to harm you. Nothing's going to happen to you. Don't worry. You're my people. And God puts his arms down and says, as long as you hold to me, you'll be just fine. The peak was David. And after that, things started going down. The airplanes started going down. There were good kings, then there were bad kings. There were good times and bad times as the plane slowly goes lower and lower until the last good king, and then that nosedives. The last good king was King Uzziah. That's the last good king that the Israelites had. And after that, the plane nosedives. The people nosedive, and Israelites then are allowed to be taken over. God says, fine, I'm done. Done being patient with you people. You guys need to learn. So he lifts up his arms in a way, and here come the foreign invaders. The moment King Uzziah dies, God knows this is what's going to happen. And so he prepares one of his prophets. He prepares Isaiah. And he says, I'm not going to let everybody take it over. I'm going to leave a remnant. I'm going to leave, as these people are carted off, I'm going to leave them prophets so that they have a way to come back. That's what happens. And we know what this is like in our world. We know what lawlessness sometimes looks like. We know what it's like to live in a godless world at times. We know what it's like to have other religions around us telling us that Christianity is ridiculous and obsolete. We know what life was like even back then. One writer wrote this. He said, in their peace and affluence, the Israelites had forgotten God, abandoned worship, and turned to self-indulgence and full of self-pride. That's what life was like back at 640 BC when King Uzziah died. And that's what life is like right now. Satan uses this as an opportunity. And Satan will use this to try to pull you away. Satan will tell you, and maybe you have even fallen for the temptation to believe, you know what? You don't have access to God anymore. You are unauthorized to go to the Lord. You want forgiveness from God? He's not giving you forgiveness. Look at what you've done. Look at how many times you've done it. He's not open. No access for you, no forgiveness. You need God's help? You need God to intervene? You need God to answer some of your prayers? Sorry, no access. God is busy doing other things, or maybe there really isn't a God that you thought there was. You need God's love. Having a rough week? People are letting you down. You need God's love? No love for you. No access. No access to God. You're going to have to find another way. Need to be assured that you are God's child? Sorry, no admittance. Not for you. And with that, those temptations now surround us in this dark world. This is the world we live in, similar to the world that Isaiah lived in. And so when God says, when King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, when Isaiah says this, God now lets him see what he sees. God now lets Isaiah, okay, this is the world you live in. Now, let me show you what heaven is like. And Isaiah gets to go through something that we have a recording of two other people that got to do, and that is, while they're still mortal, to go up into God's presence, to be beamed up in a way, and now you're in heaven, and you're with God. And later you're going to be asked to go back and record what you saw. This is what he saw. And this is what we need to hear, because we have been asked to live in a dark world. We have been asked to live in a sinful world where people are self-indulgent, where they have full of self-pride, where they abandon worship. And we get to see what God sees. And we get to see what heaven is like. That's what's recorded for us right now. So, in the year King Uzziah died, God brings up Isaiah to prepare him. You're about to go and live in this world. You're about to be one of maybe 7 prophets in the entire world that's going to keep this message alive. And this is what Isaiah sees and records for us. First off, he says, I saw the Lord. I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. So the first thing he realizes, this is no ordinary court. This is no ordinary king's court. This is God's court. And he is there high and exalted. He is the God of all gods. He's the King of all kings. Not only that, the train of his robe filled the entire temple. This is no ordinary king. This is God. This is the one who created all things. This is the one who sustains all things. This is the triune God. This is the God you're going to meet someday. Someday when your body grows cold because your heart stops beating and you pass away, this is the King of all kings that you're going to have a face-to-face interview with someday. In wanting to go into a place that originally you had no access to. So what's going to be different? How will you be able to stand in front of that? How will you have confidence? Here's also what Isaiah sees. He says, above him, above God, were seraphs. Now, this is the only time in Scripture that seraphs are recorded. Seraphs are a type of angel, maybe. We sing of seraphs in Christmas time, seraphim and cherubim, right? We usually sing about these things. So we don't know if this is a rank of angel or perhaps this is their job. Remember, all angels are created to serve God for our behalf. And God could have made them in a rank form, or he could have given them special work to do. But we have a classification called seraphs, a seraph type of angel. Each of these seraphs had 6 wings. With 2 wings, they covered their faces. What does that mean? They realize that even though they're angels, even though they're holy, they have no business even laying their eyes on God. With 2 wings, they cover their feet. Even though they are allowed to stand in heaven, they realize, I have no business even standing next to God. And with 2, they're flying. So with two wings, they carry out God's task, what the angels are supposed to do. And they were calling to one another, a song. They were saying or speaking to one another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. That's the song we sang to begin this. So what we see here is perhaps this is the angel's job, to just remind heaven exactly why they're there, exactly who fills the court. It's the Lord, the triune God, holy, 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 who is God and perfect at all times, the creator of all things, the King of kings, the Lord of lords. At the sound of their voices, Isaiah says, the doorpost, it was so loud, so filling, so booming, so heartfelt, the voices that the doorposts and the thresholds of God's court shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. You want to talk about power? What kind of voice would be needed to have this place shake? This is what the angels possess. This is how much they wanted people to know that God is holy and we are in his presence. Well, how would you be feeling right now? Scared? It's okay. Scared? Isaiah was scared. This is what Isaiah says. He says, "Woe to me, I cried. I'm ruined, for I'm a man of unclean lips. I'm sinful in my words. I live among people of unclean lips. I buy into what they say. I mimic what the world says. And my eyes now have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." So he's saying the more I am standing in here, the more I realize I have no business being in here. No authorized person, that's me. And somehow I'm here. And somehow I get to look at this. And somehow I get to be in God's presence, even though I'm sinful, even though I see things I shouldn't, even though I say things I shouldn't, even though I do things I shouldn't. I have no business even being around God. Maybe you know what that's like. The more time you spend in the Bible, I will not be surprised if you start realizing the more you need God's grace. The more you realize how great God's grace is, the more you realize how desperate you are for his love and forgiveness. And that's a good thing. That's what it's all about. The more you stand in God's presence, the more you realize, I have no business being here. The more you realize, my goodness, he's forgiven everything, every single thing, the more you realize how great and wonderful of a gift faith is. Woe to me, I cried, I'm a man of unclean lips. I have no business being here. What does God do? God moves. God does something. He acts. He rescues. He cleans Isaiah. What he does is then one of the seraphs and God's order flew to Isaiah with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken from the tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth, and he said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for." So with it, the angel brings on behalf of God and touches him. And when he touches him, he's changed. And then Isaiah hears the voice of the Lord saying, "Who am I going to send? Who am I going to send back into this dark world? Who am I going to send into this world of selfishness? Who am I going to send when people are different than me, that do not want me?" And Isaiah cannot help but say, "Here am I. Send me." All of this changed. Look at the difference in just a moment. In just one touch, one moment, everything changed for Isaiah. He stood there with trembling knees, and then a moment later he says, "I'll go. I'll represent you. I will go and be your representative. I will go to this dark world, and I will reflect your love. Send me, please. Send me. Let me go." It may be scary, but that's fine. I've been touched by God, and it's going to be okay. Okay, Pastor, what does this have to do with me? I'm going back into my work week. I'm going back into my world. Well, a couple of things this has to do with you. First thing is that just like Isaiah, we had no authorization to be in heaven. When we came to this world, we're not allowed to be there. But God touched you. When you were brought to faith, God touched you. He didn't use a piece of coal. He used water and used his word. And when he touched you, he brought you to faith, and instantly you're changed. Instantly, you are now a child of God. Instantly, your relationship with God has changed. Instantly, you are washed clean. Instantly, your punishment has been put onto Jesus. Instantly, you now have peace and God is your friend. Instantly, when you meet this man someday, you realize he's going to say, welcome home. So glad you're here. Couldn't wait to be with you forever. That's what changed. That's what this has to do with you. Because God touched you, you are now clean. Okay, what does this have to do with you? If you're filling in your blanks, this is what this means. Because of Jesus, because God touched you, whether through the Word, through baptism, you now can approach God. You can talk to God, speak to God, trust in God, draw love from God, draw forgiveness from God, draw whatever you need from God because He is now your friend. And so with that, this week, approach God. Approach God in confidence. Go and be that angel to somebody else. Who in your life feels broken? Who in your life feels unforgivable? Who in your life feels, I have no business coming to church? I have no business coming to church because of what I've done. Go and be that angel that God is going to send and touch them. Let them know that they have a friend. Let them know that it's going to be okay. Let them know that they have hope just like you have hope. And then, as always, let God be the place where you go. Go to God, approach God, and shop at His bounty and go to Him for forgiveness. He'll give you more forgiveness than you can handle. Go to Him for help. He'll give you more help and more wise help than you can do with, than you know what to do with. He'll give you strength to endure. Please stand, won't you? You know, as we turn the calendar to a new year, in this case 2024, it's always a great time for us to reflect on all the blessings God has given to us. And I'm thankful especially for the gift of technology. The fact that you can worship with us and that you just worshiped with us through technology, through something that God allowed us to invent so that you could be part of this worship service. Unfortunately, you could say God doesn't make all this technology and the ministry that we have prepaid. He asks us to worship Him through our givings. So I wanted to thank you for if you have given in the past, especially towards this online community. It has been great, and we're glad we're able to serve you through your offerings. Maybe today is the best time for you to give your best gift. Take a look at the bottom of the screen and you'll see how you can do that. Or maybe even better, today is now the best time for you to give a reoccurring gift. Whatever you give, however generously you give, we thank you for it because it's through your offerings and your gifts that we're able to reach you and allow you to come and worship with us through technology.